I will tell you something that happened to me one night. The truth is that I am very incredulous about ghost stories and things like that. I always read horror stories and I have doubts about whether they are true or lies. But what happened to me that night was something that never crossed my mind, something I would never have thought would happen to me. I was coming back from a place. It was around 3:30 in the morning exactly, and I was in a taxi. The trip had no inconvenience, but when I was getting home I saw a lady standing in the middle of a bridge over a black water channel. She was looking at the water, dressed completely in white. When the taxi turned around and passed by the channel again, she was still there, standing, totally motionless. It caught my attention so much that I told the taxi driver. It's starting to rain, and that crazy woman is standing there, in the middle of the channel. The taxi driver calmly told me, "No, miss, that's not a lady, it's a ghost." I started laughing, when suddenly I heard a horrible and inexplicable lament. Even now I remember it clearly in my head. I got so nervous that I asked the taxi driver for help. He accompanied me to the door of my house. I was really surprised, and I realized that these things are really real and that they exist. My grandmother used to talk a lot about things like that when we did not listen. This next story happened precisely in Reynosa many years ago. My grandmother had 5 children whom she had to raise and support by herself in the absence of my grandfather. One night, arriving very tired and still having to cook, she went to the kitchen and noticed the gas had run out. My grandmother had a maid who lived a little far away. The distance was long, and already exhausted, she decided to call my oldest uncle, then 16, to go with his godmother to ask for permission to cook since the gas had run out. My uncle began to complain and answer my grandmother rudely because he did not want to go with his godmother. It was very far. He threw a fit until finally, tired, they gave him no choice. It was around 11 at night. My grandmother, already angry, grabbed him firmly by the arm and told him to stop and go with his godmother. Seeing my grandmother so angry, my uncle stopped, grabbed what he needed, and went to his godmother's house, not without answering my grandmother again and saying things to her. She retorted, "Follow me, and you will look like the devil." He laughed and continued on his way. It was very dark and back then there were not many houses inhabited, there were mostly empty lots. He arrived at his godmother's, cooked, said goodbye, and started home. He wanted to take a shortcut across a vacant lot at the corner. That place had a bad reputation because robbers and lazy people gathered there. He decided to take the risk and crossed the lot. He was already half a block from home when he felt someone following him. He turned and indeed a person was behind him, all in black. He couldn't distinguish well in the dark and didn't pay much attention because it was common for people to walk late when coming from nearby factories. Suddenly he heard a horse's hoof. Then, as if something multiplied, he turned to see the figure and it was much larger than he had first seen. He looked down and saw that it had a goat's paw and a chicken's claw. When he looked up, all he saw were a pair of red eyes with a very intense stare. He dropped what he was carrying and started to run without looking back. He could hear that thing coming closer and closer. Desperate, he screamed, "Mom! Mom!" When he reached the door of the house he decided to turn, and the last thing he remembered was that the thing was about to touch his shoulder. Suddenly my grandmother came out and fainted into his arms. My grandma, terrified, brought him in, gave him a smell of alcohol to revive him, and asked what had happened. He could only answer, "Forgive me, Mom, I will never answer you again." He promised to obey her in everything after that. It is said that many years ago, in the colonial period of Mexico, in Michoacán in the town called Los Urdiales, lived the administrator of the Hacienda del Quincio, Don Juan de la Cadena Frigueros, a Spaniard who, ruined in his homeland, traveled to New Spain to make a fortune. Don Juan got a job as administrator for Don Pedro de la Coruña, Count of Sierra Gorda. Don Pedro had a very beautiful daughter who captivated Don Juan's heart. Unfortunately, The man was not rich enough to claim her, so he dedicated himself to trying to get money, mainly from usurers. Worse still, for a long time he skimmed from the pawned items, real savings that each pawned person would one day want to retrieve, to marry, to heal, or to satisfy some need. Don Pedro told him that that money was savings and might benefit the pawners in the future. Of course that was not the case, the money went directly to the usurer. Finally Don Juan de la Cadena managed to amass a great fortune and asked for Don Pedro's daughter's hand. He was denied, which caused Don Juan great depression, leading to his death. It is said that since then, at night, his soul cries out, "Come for your real means," for an hour and then disappears, trying to enter what was once his home. It seems he was punished for his robberies, forced to return all the money he took from the pawns. Of course, knowing him dead, no one answers his calls, and to this day he continues to scream. And so it will continue, because no one lives there anymore, no one can claim such money. This next tale passed down in my family many years ago. My grandmother, whenever her father went to work very early, liked to follow him. One time my great-grandmother forbade it and scolded her, but my grandmother did not care and followed my grandfather, ignoring her mother's words. Her mother had warned that the devil would appear for her disobedience. She left the house and continued walking along that long path where her father went every morning. She was walking quietly when suddenly a black horse appeared. At first she was not scared and took a stick to scare it away. However, the more she tried, the bigger it grew. This started to frighten her. Somehow she managed to hit it hard, making it turn. She was terrified when she saw the horse had red eyes, as red as burning coal, with smoke coming out of its nostrils. The horse went into the bushes and disappeared. From then on, my grandmother never disobeyed her mother again. It is an experience passed down through generations. The Sayona, she is the spirit of a young woman. The legend speaks of a very beautiful woman who killed her husband and son, burned them alive, and then hanged her own mother. Before dying, the mother threw a curse on her, calling her a Sayona and condemning her to wander forever. Since then, her soul pursues unfaithful men to take them to darkness and suffering. To both women and men she appears as a beautiful woman who asks them to light a cigarette, but when they do, they see the face of their own death. If they do not die from the fright of seeing her, she harasses them in various ways until they have a heart attack, or chases them until they fall from a ravine, or causes some other terrible death. There is another version. A young married woman was defamed with gossip and intrigues until the husband accused her of infidelity and claimed the child she had was not his. The jealous husband set fire to the hut where she lived. The woman ran out but forgot the child, who died in the flames. Since then, the soul of the Sayona wanders without rest among the living, seeking eternal revenge. The Ibunche. The Ibunche is a child stolen by witches when he was still a baby. The envoys of evil, with their curses, obstructed all the holes in his body and then turned him into a kind of elf with his head twisted backward who walks on one leg. Some say this mythological being is the product of the union between an evil witch and another witch, used as guardian of their caves and advisor in their mysterious activities. Despite any blood bond, he is treated like a slave and subjected to cruel punishments. Another version about his appearance says that when he was little they dislocated his leg, and now the creature always carries a claw. His head is turned towards his back and he has a single leg with which he moves by jumping, since the second leg comes out of his nape and hangs on his chest in a grotesque way. Trapped in the collective imagination of the Mapuche peoples, people describe him in different ways. Some claim he cannot speak and is covered with a veil with a very soft texture, similar to wool. Others say he is disfigured and naked, with very long hair and beard, full of wounds and bruises from beatings. He is mute, and when the wizards consult him, he answers yes or no by the movements of his head. He emits heartbreaking cries when beaten. The Ibunche does not harm the elderly, so if someone finds it they will not suffer damage. It is said to be especially fed with the flesh of newborn children, but what it likes most is the meat of chihu. According to legend, it punishes hunters who kill animals without need or out of greed.